Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one in a very literal way. They're taught that Satan and his demons are everywhere, seeking every opportunity to mislead and harm Jehovah's people if they can. This has led to some rather interesting rumors and ideas in the religion over the years. You ready? Let's get into it. One of the more colorful beliefs that surfaced among some Jehovah's Witnesses regarding demons and demonic influence was the idea that Smurfs, yes, those little blue cartoon characters, were in some way demonic. Now, you might be chuckling, thinking, how could these cute, tiny creatures that entertain millions of children worldwide be seen as a threat? Well, it's a fascinating glimpse into how religious beliefs can sometimes interact with popular culture in very unexpected ways. You see, during the 1980s, there was this massive cultural wave known as the Satanic Panic. People everywhere were worried about hidden demonic influences in music, games, TV shows, you name it. And right in the midst of this, some stories started popping up in certain Jehovah's Witnesses congregations. These weren't official doctrines from the watchtower, mind you, but more like local tales that gained a bit of traction. And one of these tales was about the Smurfs. Now, imagine sitting in a kingdom hall where serious discussions of spirituality and doctrine are the norm, and hearing sincere concerns that the Smurf toys, those little blue figures, could come to life, influenced by demonic power. It sounds like something out of a child's overactive imagination, but there were genuine fears among some believers. There were even rumors, believe it or not, of a Smurf toy walking out of a kingdom hall during a meeting. While the Smurf story might seem rather bizarre, it's deeply tied to the community's efforts to protect their faith and lifestyle from what they perceive as malevolent influences all around them. You might be wondering why this sort of thinking finds fertile ground among Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all rooted in their fundamental beliefs and the way they view the world, a perspective that's deeply influenced by their interpretation of Scripture. Jehovah's Witnesses hold a very strong conviction that we're living in the last days, the end times, a period marked by widespread moral decay and the influence of Satan, the devil. They believe that Satan actively rules the world and that his influence permeates through various channels, particularly through pop culture and other religions, which they say are from Babylon the Great, the world empire of false religion. This worldview is based on their interpretation of scriptures like 1 John 5:19, which says the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. Now, when you believe that the devil's not just a symbolic evil, but an active, pervasive, malevolent presence seeking to mislead not only individuals, but entire societies, you approach everything with a degree of suspicion, fear, and caution. Given this context, anything that does not clearly align with their beliefs or that has connections, however tenuous, to what they consider worldly or pagan practices is dangerous. Let's explore another area where beliefs about demons intersect significantly with modern culture for Jehovah's Witnesses, specifically in the realm of toys and games. It's very intriguing how objects meant for play and entertainment can be seen through this kind of lens of spiritual fear and panic. Take, for example, fantasy-based games, or toys that include magic or supernatural themes. During the height of the Satanic Panic, not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but much of society was swept up in the fears about the influence of these kinds of games. Dungeons & Dragons, a game steeped in fantasy role-playing, magic, and mythical creatures, is one example that became a focal point in their discussions about potential spiritual danger. The game involves casting spells, battling demons, and other activities that, from a witness perspective, mimic occult practices. Given their belief that these practices can invite demonic influence, you can imagine why a game like that would be highly discouraged among the Jehovah's Witnesses. When the Harry Potter series became a global phenomenon, enchanting children and adults alike with its tales of wizardry and adventure, it too was met with suspicion and disapproval from most Jehovah's Witnesses. Their fear is that engaging with stories like that might normalize concepts that are considered occult or pagan and end up getting you possessed or otherwise harassed by demons. In the day-to-day life of a Jehovah's Witness, these concerns translate into careful scrutiny of the toys and games that are allowed in the home. The worry is always about the subtle ways in which such toys could influence a child's understanding of spiritual matters or inadvertently open a door to unwanted unwanted spiritual influence. And by that, I mean inviting literal demons into your home or into your child's body and mind. That's how they believe. It's about maintaining a vigilant stance against a world perceived to be under Satan's direct control, where even innocent activities could have deeper, darker connections with the devil and his minions. Many witnesses are hyper concerned with keeping their homes spiritually clean, an uncontaminated refuge from the spiritual warfare they believe is raging outside. So while to most people it seems like a serious overreaction to worry about the spiritual implications of kids' toys and fantasy games, for Jehovah's Witnesses, these aren't just pastimes, but potential battlegrounds for the souls of their children. This goes way beyond just children's toys and games, though. Jehovah's Witnesses also have a fascinating, unsettling idea that any physical object can become a conduit for demonic influence. So why do Jehovah's Witnesses believe that demons can attach themselves to objects? Well, this stems from their broader understanding of the spiritual realm. They believe that demons, fallen angels who rebelled along with Satan, aren't just passive spectators of the world, but are actively trying to mislead and corrupt humans, and especially Jehovah's Witnesses. They have them as their primary targets. To witnesses, these demonic forces are very real, and they look for any opportunity to influence or enter a person's life and their worldview. Given this backdrop, objects associated with other religions, the occult, or supernatural themes are seen as risks. They can include things like a four-leaf clover or a rabbit's foot for good luck. Using any kind of good luck charm is seen as inviting the devil into your mind and life. Statues that might be venerated in other religious practices too, or artwork that depicts occult symbols or themes, are all viewed with fear and suspicion of actually being inhabited or surrounded by demons. The belief here is that such items don't just represent, but actually harbor demonic forces that could spiritually pollute their home or person. And this concern leads Jehovah's Witnesses to be extremely cautious about the items they bring into their house. They don't just avoid direct involvement with other religions or the occult. They want to ensure that nothing within their personal space can serve as a bridge for demonic activity. So for instance, if a witness were to acquire an item from a garage sale or inherit a piece of antique furniture, they might feel the need to get rid of it if there's any suspicion about its past or if it makes them feel uneasy spiritually. And I remember that so clearly. If any item gave you any kind of feeling of bad juju, you threw that out. Some would go as far as to burn it or otherwise destroy it to try and release the demons from the object. This belief and practice served to reinforce the boundary between Jehovah's Witnesses and the world that they see as under Satan's control. Now, for those of us who are EXJWs, we see it as another way the watchtower socially isolates Jehovah's Witnesses from the real world. But those are just a few examples of the plethora of things some Jehovah's Witnesses have viewed as demonic over the years. In fact, there's a great EXJW Reddit thread from about 3 years ago, where former Jehovah's Witnesses are listing off all the things that they were told were demonic when they were kids. And quite a lot of those I heard when I was growing up, but not all of them. Some congregations and families were more strict than others about those sorts of things, so your experience might have been different from mine or from the people on Reddit. Let me know in the comments which of these you remember, and if you have any others that aren't listed here. Number 1, garage sales. One man's trash is another man's demonic treasure. Then there was the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Demons. And as I said, the Smurfs. Then some people thought E.T., the movie E.T. from the early 80s, they thought E.T. was demonic. Some people thought Ninja Turtles were demonic. That was a thing when I was a kid, and I never understood that one. In later years, it was Pokemon. Like I said, Harry Potter.
You're a wizard, Harry.
And apparently, that's a problem. Lucky Charms. I definitely remember Lucky Charms. Magically suspicious. TV shows like Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie. Marvel movies. With great power comes great demonic potential. Dungeons and Dragons, we talked about that. The Cabbage Patch Kids. One that I never heard and surprised me was some people said that Hello Kitty was seen as demonic. I don't get the connection there. Wind chimes and dream catchers. Thrift stores. Do you remember that? I remember that. Secondhand clothes. First-hand demons. The Trolls dolls. Any Disney princess movie because they always had magic and stuff like that in it. Chris Angel, the magician, was seen as demonic. That's So Raven because she could see into the future. Wizards of Waverly Place. The Chronicles of Narnia. Lord of the Rings. Sauron, Satan. Explicit music. What the Smurf? Always seen as demonic. Old lamps that flicker. It's not physics, it's Satan. Pop, rock, and rap music.
You got fight for your right
to demons. Warrior cat books, I had never heard of them before. Winx Club dolls, had never heard of that before. Anime, yes, absolutely seen as demonic when I was growing up. Avatar, The Last Airbender, anything with pointy ears. Costumes and costume parties, yes, yes, yes. Those were absolutely seen as demonic when I was a kid. You did not go to costume parties that resembled Halloween, Teletubbies, anything that wasn't white American culture, basically, one Redditor said, and that was so my childhood. And the last one, any church or temple of any other denomination or religion. I want to talk about that one. Jehovah's Witnesses would not walk into another church. They were so afraid that the church was full of demons because of their being taught that all other religions were from Satan and part of Babylon the Great, the world empire, false religion. Some witnesses wouldn't even park in a church parking lot. Let's say we were out in service in the ministry work and the car group needed to pull over for some reason. If the closest parking lot was a church, they would not stop there. They would just keep going. It was wild. I've actually got a story about going into a church back from when I was married before with my ex-wife. She and I and my adopted daughter were taking an afternoon trip after the Sunday meeting. We were stopping at historical monuments along a highway that went from Louisiana and into Texas. One of the historical markers was a church that was more than 100 years old, and I thought that was really cool. I wanted to go inside. But my wife of the time was freaked out by the idea. I eventually talked her into it, and we went in, walked into this old-timey but pretty much normal-looking church sanctuary. Because I was fully in at the time, I humorously, I thought, called out into the empty church, "Hello, Satan." My wife panicked and ran out of the building. When she scolded me for doing that and freaking her out, I told her I thought it was polite to say a greeting when you walked into somebody's house. We laughed about that for years, but it just goes to show you how we looked at other churches and temples. It was madness. Now let's consider the drawbacks of this kind of heightened vigilance against perceived demonic influences, particularly in the context of toys and entertainment like fantasy games and stories. This hyper-cautious approach, while rooted in a desire to maintain spiritual purity, can have complex implications for Jehovah's Witnesses, especially for the younger members of the community. Now keep in mind that I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, and this is not medical advice. It's just my personal opinion based on my experience, research, and understanding. First, the strict avoidance of popular culture phenomena can lead to social isolation for children within the community. When kids can't participate in discussions about the latest Harry Potter book or join in when their school friends play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, they can find themselves on the periphery of social groups. That kind of isolation can be particularly challenging during the formative years, when peer relationships are crucial to developing social skills and self-esteem. Now, of course, EXJWs like myself often see this as being by design on the part of the Watchtower, so that Jehovah's Witness children grow up learning to feel isolated and different from everyone in the world outside, to keep them in the cult. Now, these kinds of restrictions can impact a child's imaginative development. Fantasy play is not just a form of entertainment, it's a critical aspect of cognitive and emotional growth. It allows children to explore different parts of their personality in a safe environment, understand social roles, develop problem-solving skills, and manage complex scenarios that involve ethical and moral questions. When children are limited to a narrow range of acceptable themes and stories, it restricts their ability to navigate and appreciate the full spectrum of human experience and emotions. For the adults in the community, this way of thinking perpetuates fear and anxiety. Constant vigilance against potential demonic influences creates an environment where fear rather than faith becomes the driving force. This can lead to stress and mental health issues, as members feel constantly under threat from these invisible forces, demons and Satan. The psychological burden of guarding against every possible demonic influence is immense, leading to paranoia and obsessive behaviors. Again, I'm not a psychologist. That is my opinion. That's what I saw happen with the people in the congregations I grew up in. And beliefs like that can sometimes lead to estrangement from family members or friends who don't share or respect those views. When a family decides to get rid of a gift because it's seen as spiritually dangerous, or when they don't participate in community events because they're considered worldly or pagan, it can strain relationships and create divides within those families and those communities. And there's also the risk of limiting critical thinking. When the focus is primarily on whether something aligns with the strict interpretation of religious doctrine as defined by the Watchtower, there's less room to explore other dimensions of an issue. Children raised in that kind of an environment grow up with a black and white view of morality, us versus them, which hinders their ability to engage critically with diverse perspectives or adapt to environments outside their community. And not just the morality, any kind of knowledge or thinking, it's always we're right, they're wrong, us versus them. While these protective measures that Jehovah's Witnesses take may be intended to safeguard their spiritual well-being, they have a lot of other consequences that affect social integration, mental health, and intellectual growth. It's a complex balance between maintaining religious convictions and engaging with the world in a healthy, constructive way. And Jehovah's Witnesses are seriously skewed in that balance. But that's what I think. Those were my experiences. What do you think? What were your experiences? Be sure to let me know in a comment below. If you like this video, be sure to click like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you want to help support my work, click on the join button below. If you don't see a join button, it's because you need to subscribe to the channel first, and then you'll see it. And as always, thanks for watching.